Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, somewhere in the world. I want to welcome you to Speak Freely with Barrington Salmon. Today is a special day. We're grateful that we were able to invite our special guests on very short notice to discuss the pardon given to the Right Honorable Mosiah Garvey by President Biden yesterday. We have with us Baba Senghor Baye, first Vice President of the UNIA DC. Am I right?
No, first President General, first Assistant President General globally, bro.
Okay. Sorry, so sorry.
That's okay. I'll take care of it.
Yeah, and Dr. Amina Meeks, Amina Blackwood Meeks. Looks like we lost her from, but she'll be back. She'll be back. So, oh, Dr. Meeks, you're back. Welcome.
I'm back.
Tell us a little about who you are, please.
I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. Those two words are separated. Grandmother. I'm a storyteller. I lecture at the Edna Manley College of the Visual and Performing Arts. I teach two courses. One is called The Self, Ethics and Creativity. And the second course is Caribbean Culture and Identity. I also function as the orator at the college. I run a storytelling course online in collaboration with the University of the West Indies at Mona, and it's called This is a Story. I have 4 children's titles out. One of them is also in Spanish. And I have a general reader called The Children Ought to Know, which places our storytelling and Anansi within the realm of cultural reparation. And that's who I am and a summary of what I do.
Baba, can you give us a summary of what you do?
Yes, my name is Baba Senghor Jawara Baye, and I currently serve as the first Assistant President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association African Communities League Rehabilitating Committee 2020. I had served 8 years as President General in the seat of the Right Excellent of Marcus Mosiah Garvey from 2008 to 2016. I am a humble servant. I'm an author. I am a grandfather also, my good sister. I'm a poet. But more importantly, I'm one who know my cosmic assignment, because we all have one. And it's all about us being obedient servants, as I was taught by those who were taught by Marcus Garvey directly, that sometimes we get into leadership and we kind of forget that we need to be humble servants for the Most High, the ancestors, and our people, and not have people serve us. So anyway, that's a little bit about what I do. I'm involved with a lot of nonprofits, a lot of other institutions, but like I say, it's really not about me, he or she, it's about we collectivity.
Yes, thank you, Baba. So Dr. Meeks, what's your impression, what's your reaction to Marcus Garvey being pardoned? Oh, she's frozen again. Baba, I'll throw it to you.
Okay, well, real quickly, we are happy to see that the discussion is taken to another level for African people all around the world. We are happy that the pardon was done. We thank people like Dr. Julius Garvey, brother P.J. Patterson, Sister Nkechi Taifa, brothers that you're going to have on, Justin, and all of the people who've done great work to put pressure on the Black Caucus members, to put pressure on the president. That seemed to be our last resort, because I was actually there in 1987 when we went before Congress with Doc Ben, Dr. Clark, President General Charles L. James, so many others that were there. And they said they could not exonerate Garvey because he was dead man. However, the movement continued. And so the last resort was to demand an executive order. Mm-hmm. And as I know the history, he can't really give an executive order, because if he did exoneration in an executive order, that would open up the door for the UNIA and all the people, his family, to go at the government for all the things they took away. So he pardoned Marcus Garvey, which is a good thing. But as I said, pardon applies guilt. Garvey wasn't guilty. In fact, it was a crime committed against Garvey, his family, and the African race by coming at Marcus
It falls
Garvey.
short. it falls short of what is really required.
Yeah, it's a process, a step in the process. And as Dr. Julius Garvey has so clearly articulated, as we articulate, it's a step in the process to create the discussion. But as I said, I was there in 1987, and I've been involved with the UNIA since 1980. So we understand clearly, even back when Calvin Coolidge in 1925 commuted the sentence of Garvey from a 5-year term, and he did 2.5 years.
Mhm.
That was because of the pressure of African people. And we understand that Garvey was continuously attacked. His human rights were violated when he was pushed out of the country. So it's a lot of pressure that came at Marcus Garvey and the family. But the UNIA stood strong and continued to strive. And we here today, over 100 years later. Also, I'd like to add Patrice Lumumba and Malcolm's 100th centenary falls this year. And I could be remiss if I didn't hail up Dr. Martin Luther King. I was there at the March on Washington as a young man in 1963. And all those ancestors I just mentioned, despite the minor differences, all had one common objective. Oh, and there, I see we've been joined by someone else. So that's it, brother, in a nutshell.
Yes, thank you, brother. Dr. Fraser.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Good afternoon.
Great. Good afternoon.
Thank you for
Thank
joining.
you.
You joined us right at the meat of the beginning of the conversation. Tell us what your impressions are, your thoughts are about Marcus Garvey being pardoned.
I'm relieved. I think this should be the beginning of the whole point of Black Studies. When Black Studies started in 1968, you can really see it as a outgrowth or a development from the Garvey movement in the 20s, because Huey Newton and Bobby Seale started that Black Panther Party in Oakland, California in 1966. They said because of two people, Robert Williams and Malcolm X. And we all know, who studied the life of Malcolm X, that there would be no Malcolm X without the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. His parents met in Montreal, Canada, at a meeting organized largely by the work of the first wife, Amy Ashwood Garvey, and they moved to Omaha, Nebraska, where Malcolm was born. And so we really see this as a result of coming full circle. The whole point of Black Studies is to tear down the division between the U.S. Academy and local communities. It is to make information accessible so that there's not a huge difference between what we learn in school and what we're able to apply in our own lives. It is my hope that this pardoning will liberate academic history, will liberate history from just being taught from a bourgeois perspective that encourages readers to only go to the white suburbs and remain there for the rest of their life. It should really be serious about understanding and realizing the sincere influence that the Garvey movement on the 20s had on the United States of America. The whole notion of a black president being a thing or being a big deal was because of the strong leadership of Marcus Garvey. So I just see this as a plus. I see it as an opportunity for historians to get out of their silos. James Baldwin once said he didn't want to be a professor, even though at the time he was alive, all American Academy was ignoring him, because he didn't want to be locked up in some white ivory tower. This announcement, this pardoning on January 19th, 2025, is an opportunity for history to come out of that ivory tower, to come out of the Western ivory tower, where it's really been since the Western Academy became a thing. And it's an opportunity to really get the deeper sense of history that we owe our young people.
Okay. Dr. Meeks, you're back?
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for putting up with my technical chat.
Oh, it is fine. It is fine.
I was saying that clearly want, and we're after full exoneration. Whatever we have, I think we have a wonderful contradiction. And the contradiction is changed. And yet we have a huge opportunity to pardon of Marcus Garvey cannot mean the same thing to all peoples everywhere. Different to those who have never supported the interest or the Black marginalized people. It means something completely different to who have internalized that they are not good enough, who want to be something completely different to the people in the Renaissance movement who were influenced by the little known place, who dared to say the black skin is not. And it clearly means something different to the African population to whom Marcus Garvey was so motivated at the time when they were coming into their independence. It means something different to Jamaica, with the population of the cocoa colonization of Jamaica, and in spite of our own people to embrace and affirm who we are. So when we talk about the impact, to be very clear of who we're talking about. When I wrote the Marcus Garvey in 2012, somebody said to me, Amina, you're crazy. We have that we were white, and all of a sudden you have written this Marcus Garvey pro eyes of Marcus Garvey to remind us that really and truly that's not who we are. Huge opportunity to curate ourselves and to understand the worldview which Garvey promulgated more than 100 years ago is still relevant to reality.
Indeed, indeed. Should we make the mistake of thinking that the work is done? What else do we need to be doing moving forward now that we have this stepping stone?
I think if I turn my camera and you will be able to hear.
To your question, Barrington, this should involve engagement of the Marcus Garvey Library that Dr. Tony Martin curated. It should begin with reading his work, but particularly the artistic aspect. We're in an age now where we're getting a lot of Hollywood films about the Nickel Boys, for example, Black Panther. And for this pardon to happen, it means that movies like Bob Marley, One Love are more acceptable. So in the schools, I think parents need to take an initiative, not to depend on the public school, but to take an initiative for themselves now that the U.S. government has recognized its wrong, recognized the pardoning, to, I would say, begin with Marcus Garvey Hero. That's not a long book. It's no more than 120 pages, not even that. And just familiarize yourself with what he did and what he preached, which was nationhood, race first. I could argue it's not excluding white people. That philosophy is not excluding white people. It's really human race first. But he's talking to Black people about having pride in your image when that race first philosophy comes. And the third principle Martin makes clear in that book is nationhood. Thinking like a nation, thinking how are you going to teach the young people who come after you how to continue your values the way Garvey did for generations after him with the Nation of Islam and with the UNI, through the UNIA organization that he did. So I think the work is not done. Now we have to put into practice what we know and apply what we know. And when we see we're not getting the history that we should be getting, take it upon ourselves to make the time to learn that history. For me, it's very personal. It's going to require a rewriting of the liberal history that we've been getting. We have to incorporate and include other factors as to why certain things happen. For example, the marches that the NAACP made popular were because of the UNIA. You know, they did not originate that. The NAACP did not originate the form of protest of marching. That came from Garvey's strategy. The idea of being an independent publisher, the idea of being an independent content creator, not catering to the mainstream, is an example that we need, especially with a second Donald Trump presidency. We need independent media, the way that Garvey demonstrated it with the Negro World newspaper. So it's a few other avenues. It's opening an important door to American culture about what is influenced. Last point I want to make. It wasn't the white man that caused Garvey to be deported. When you study his history carefully, it was the jealous, backbiting other editors like Cyril Briggs that wrote to, and Hubert Harrison that wrote to the government, asking the government to persecute Garvey. See, when you study our history, I in my heart, I want a pardon from Harrison's behavior. I believe Harrison in spirit should apologize to all of us here for contributing to, because no other editor paid Harrison more than Garvey. But it was so sad because crabs in a barrel happened that the U.S. government, you know, through J. Edgar Hoover, chose to listen to Harrison. And he traveled from New York to Washington to basically give Hoover information and intelligence that they later used to charge him and then deport him. So when you know your history, the lesson is also we should not be behaving like crabs in a barrel as Black journalists.
Yeah.
We should not. We should work for those values that the Garvey movement taught us, because there's a lot in there that we haven't even began to scratch the surface of.
Okay.
If I may, bro, because you know I told you I only have about another 15 minutes, but I appreciate what my brother Dr. Frazier just shared. He is right on point. But I want to make it clear that the works of Garvey continues to be done. And not only that, we have 5 nation states on the continent now that are actively involved with the government of the UNIA. Our 3rd Assistant President General is on the continent, a young brother named Chief Fode. So the work is still going on. But like he said, like Dr. Frazier said, we need to understand that many of us have become the problem for ourselves by not accepting the fact that great ancestors like Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Thomas Sankara, Nannie Helen Burroughs, Amy Jocks Garvey, Henrietta Vinton Davis, they all were working in our interests. And despite the minor differences that they might have had, they had more in common. So as we rehabilitate the process, as my brother said, we don't want to make the same mistakes that were made in the past. As Runoko Rashidi always taught us, you study the past to understand where you are in the present and to prepare to be the visionary Garvey wanted us to be for the future. So we're building for young brothers and sisters not to make the same mistakes that we made in the past.
Absolutely not.
And also, I will say that even though the UNIA ACL Rehabilitating Committee government is growing today, we are interfacing with many other groups that do great work. So as my brother so clearly articulated, as we were trained by Garvey, I was trained by people who were trained by Garvey. We need to be obedient servants to the needs of our people and to humble yourself, to not always think you know everything. Nobody can know everything. So we need each other to build the kind of the coalition building that needs to be done. And he made a great point when he talked about my teacher, Tony Martin. Tony Martin was very clear. Runoko Rashidi, many of those ancestors, and as we know in the African tradition, my brother, the ancestors still live. We are spiritual beings today having a physical experience. We need to understand Malcolm, Lumumba. As I say, this is the 100th centennial of Malcolm and Lumumba, who happened to be born in 1925, the actual year that they sent Marcus Garvey to jail.
Right.
So that we need to look at those positives in our history and to leave alone the negatives. And like he also talked about how we have become crabs in a barrel. That's a very good point, because many of our own people, even members in the UNIA back in the day, attacked the leadership of Garvey and sold things out because they had been programmed so with Urugu energy that
Yes.
they became our own worst enemy. And Garvey taught us about that.
Yes,
Garvey learned a lot. And when he wrote the Course of African Philosophy, he made it profoundly clear for us not to make the same mistakes. He also made it clear in the Philosophy and Opinions 3 that Amy Jocks Garvey put together that we had grown to become our own worst enemy. But we have to understand it's not just about Garvey. It's about the plan that Garvey had. If we go back, and I'm going to stop on, Garvey, I used to be long-winded, but I'm going to stop on this point. We go back to the Haiti Revolution, where Dessalines and them did what they did, and other people did what they did. They actually reached out to Africans all around the world. So Garvey was able to learn from those who came before him of what was missing. And when he traveled around the world and say, where is the black man's government? Where is the black man's men and women of big affairs? He didn't see them, so he set out to build them, but he didn't do it alone. There are a whole lot of people who worked with the UNIA back then. And today, there's a lot of people working with us. So I say the pardoning is a great door opener for discussions like this, so we can talk about why Garvey should be exonerated. And I want to make it profoundly clear. The difference in exoneration versus pardoning. Exoneration implies you were not guilty. Pardoning implies that you were guilty. And so if even though the executive order, he's not going to exonerate, they couldn't do that by law. A lot of people don't know that. They couldn't exonerate. However, we pressed the Congress, which could have exonerated in 1987, when I said Doc Ben, Doc Clark, Tony Martin, Robert Hill, Honorable Charles L. James, P.J. Patterson, even Judah Stein, and a whole lot of people were there. And Congress told us that they could not exonerate a dead person.
Okay.
Now, so this today, the only alternative for people like Dr. Julius Garvey, P.J. Patterson, was to press the presidents of this country to do an executive order. Barack Obama dropped the ball and didn't do it in 8 years. Now here you have Biden presenting the pardon. So we applaud that, but let's be very clear, the work is not done. We must exonerate Garvey in our minds and emulate the works, words, and deeds. So I applaud you, my brother Barrington, and I'm gonna stick around for a little while longer, but we're busy. We're busy clarifying to the world that yes, we're excited about this, but we also are most excited about people being reintroduced to the work that our great ancestors had laid down for us and for us to move forward.
Thank
So
you, Baba.
we say one God, one aim, one destiny, one Africa.
Thank you, Baba. Dr. Meeks,
Uh-huh.
jump in. Can you
Yeah,
give us
yes, I think it is very important for us to grasp the opportunities that this pardon has presented to us. One opportunity is for us to introduce our children to Garvey, not as biographical data, but as important mission statements, purpose statements, agenda for how we move forward as a human race, as a race of Africans and African descended people. I think the other opportunity presented to us is for us to understand the dangers of operating in silos and for us to get together as one people. And there certainly are issues that we can rally around. The issue of Haiti is begging Black people around the world to come to a new understanding of Haiti and to prevent an invasion, because people have been rattling their swords. And we know if they come for you in the morning, they will not be afraid to come for me at night. The fourth opportunity that I see is for us to get together. My brother Baba Baye spoke about the way we distrusted one another. It's for us to examine the reasons that happened, for us to shed ourselves of all the negative things that we have been taught about ourselves, that we're from a race of savages who gave nothing to the world, and yet the world is so eager to take the nothing that we have. So part of what we need to do as another opportunity is self-examination. What are the ethics by which we live? What are the principles that we demonstrate, not just in preaching and teaching, but in the way we live? Especially as all teachers know that children know by what is taught, but they also know better by what is caught. And what are our children catching from us? And what are we catching from ourselves, from each other? And finally, for now, the opportunity that we are presented with is to root out corruption at every single level. And to do that, we think globally, but we act locally. What is the corruption in our individual organizations, in our civic groups, in our non-governmental organizations, in our aspiring political groupings? If we can't fix that, we cannot honor that which Marcus Garvey stood for. And we can honor what Marcus Garvey stood for, whether he's pardoned or not. Yeah. Whether he's exonerated or not. We don't need to follow on that. We need to be the leaders. One of my favorite quotes about Marcus Garvey, and I'm paraphrasing, Marcus Garvey looked around and said, "Who then is the black man's king? Where is his God?" He said, "I didn't see one, and so I decided I have to be it." And what I take away from that is, every problem that we identify, we are at least part of the solution.
I would like to let the viewers know that Dr. Meeks is joining us from Jamaica. Kingston? Are you in Kingston?
I'm in Jamaica. I will not tell you where I am in this age of scientific technology to time me.
Joining us from Jamaica. We're thankful. And let me ask you, Dr. Meeks.
Yes.
What's the reaction been in Jamaica to the announcement?
All right. So in the Pan-African family is united. That this is a piecemeal something. And our goal is exoneration. He wasn't guilty of what you said he was guilty of. So you can't pardon somebody who is innocent. He must be exonerated. We're clear on that. We are clear that Marcus Garvey needs to be taught in schools. The program that I wrote in 2012 that cost the government a tremendous amount of money and was a gift to Jamaica on the 50th anniversary of our independence, that needs to be reinstituted. There is also a group, the Marcus Garvey in Schools Foundation, which has been running a pilot project, proof of concept, for how to teach Marcus Garvey at the baby level, and they have been funding this out of their own pockets. And what we're saying is, if Marcus Garvey is so important to you, then you cannot ask private citizens to fund an education program that introduces this very important first national hero to our children. We're also saying that the museum, the Marcus Garvey Museum, which exists at Liberty Hall in Kingston, must find the way to take the information into the libraries in all 14 parishes. And so there are 14 parish libraries and 781 community libraries. We must take the information to the people if we are serious about what this means.
Thank you, Doc. Thank
you. Brother Barrington, I just want to add something that's very significant. Marcus Garvey's heritage was Maroon. Recently, there was a coming together of all the various different Maroons in Jamaica, which is very, very critical because, you know, historically they had differences, but they have united. And what our sister just said is so important. I just wanted to add that because Garvey's roots was Maroon.
For sure.
A point that Dr. Meeks made that I just want to echo was stated in that incredible film that Roy T. Anderson and Allison Anderson produced on Garvey called African Fundamentalism, that we really don't need a pardon. While it is helpful and it's an opportunity for both countries to improve um, in their diplomatic relations, it's not necessary because he is who he was. So while the pardon is helpful, the exoneration is not exactly important. Two things I want to hit on why Garvey is dramatically important in terms of ideas to study that he inspired. Kwame Nkrumah was a student at Lincoln University, and as Baba Bey, who is here, who is a member of the UNIA, Nkrumah learned from a UNIA member who attended that 1937 course on African philosophy, from which Message to the People came out of, that Dr. Tony Martin wrote an introduction to, and just the influence that Harvey's teaching of Garvey's principles had on Nkrumah is so essential, because you see the power of Garvey's teachings in Nkrumah's book, Neocolonialism. And no better theory than that explains why Liberia was shut out, why Du Bois and Edwin Barclay and the Barclay family, under the control of the American Harvey Firestone, was able to expel Garvey in 1923. And what an incredible theory that continues to explain Jamaica's political situation to this day, all because of Garvey's philosophy influencing Nkrumah to write what he wrote in the 1970s, that incredible book which my dad had, Conscientism, but more importantly than that book is Neocolonialism. And the subtitle is The Last Stage of Imperialism, because that describes the political situation where the Jamaican government still to this day is too beholden to the U.S. For basic needs, for its economy, for the tourism sector, and just contrast the development of the Jamaican government in terms of so-called independence to the Cuban government. It's quite an interesting contrast, and the support, just the ideas. Even Castro himself had to apologize, Tony Martin wrote, to Jamaica. Well, really, he had to apologize to the Cuban people for how the leader in the 30s ruled with an iron fist, because of the power of Garvey in the 20s. That leadership, I believe his name starts with an M, Machado. Not Machado. His name is not coming to me. The leader in the 20s, in the late 20s to the early 30s in Cuba.
It was Machado.
It was Machado in Cuba that Castro had to apologize for because of that influence of Garvey. But how that theory, what a powerful theory that Garvey movement inspired to get Nkrumah to write about, to describe Jamaica's condition to this day. Garvey had already written, in a sense, of a neo-colonial state when he was in London working for Dusay Muhammad Ali, and Ali's newspaper, the African Orient Times and Review, and he learned what it took from Ali to print your own work, to distribute your paper, and he did that, and he was fearless in his journalism, in criticizing what he called the red tapist government of Jamaica. This was very early in 1911. This was before he came to New York. You have a lot of biographers who claim that Garvey learned everything about printing from Hubert Harrison. That is not true. He was a printer under his father's friend in Kingston. He learned printing in London from Ali. So he knew what it took to print. I'm still in awe as to the commercial success. And I think the reason he had so much commercial success, more than Hubert Harrison, more than A. Philip Randolph in the late 19 teens, was because of his belief in God and his undying faith that God will help him succeed when enlightening the masses to do for self and not to depend on a government or not to depend on something outside of oneself to progress in life. So those are just 2 points I wanted to touch on. The neocolonialism theory that Nkrumah wrote about, and his work as a printer in Kingston and in London before coming to New York, where he had great success.
But the thing,
May,
thank you.
may I just say this quickly, Barry, that it's not just Garvey's influence on Nkrumah, it's on the entire continent of Africa as they were coming into their own in the independence struggles that we have yet to understand. Some of it we have taken, we have recycled. So, for example, we have a wonderful opportunity to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And in that is to understand Garvey's influence on somebody like Nyerere, for example, who took from Marcus Garvey the 7 principles of his nation building, which we have recycled as the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, without even realizing that Nyerere took this under the influence of Garvey. And it's not just the African leaders past, it's the African leaders present. It's Nelson Mandela. It's what's going on in Burkina Faso.
Yes.
And when we look and we see what these people are doing on our behalf, as Bob Marley said, Africa awaits her creators. And without that grounding in that philosophy about what we have given to the world and what we have still yet to give to the world, it was Marcus Garvey who said, we have built many civilizations.
Yeah.
And with the resources that we have of people and time and minerals, we can build another that will astonish the world. And so we have to take hold of all of that and recognize it's not just Nkrumah. It's wherever Black people are found. With all of the contradictions of those of us who now are going to be waking up either to madness or to a different level of sanity, to say, what does it mean that I have believed this lie about Marcus Garvey all this time, and now the very people who told the lie have come this close to saying, well, it wasn't true. What does it mean for how we assist ourselves and those people to emancipate yourself from mental slavery, to have the audacity to interpret the world through our eyes, through our culture, through our heritage, before somebody else has to do that for us through their lenses.
So my brother, if I may, before I leave, because as I say, I got another thing to do, I want to appreciate what has been being shared by our dear sister, Meeks, and our brother Frazier. I really appreciate you all, because it is important for all of us to understand culture, journalism, our own history. All of that is very important. I want to highlight something, though, my brother Frazier said that was very important, Kwame Nkrumah, and what my sister Meeks just said. Thomas Sankara was influenced greatly by the works of Kwame Nkrumah. Brother Traoré, who is manifesting the legacies of not only Kwame Nkrumah and Thomas Sankara, but Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey is still the only individual in 1920 that was elected president of Africa. I want to stress that. President of Africa, not just the President General of the UNIA. Nobody else has been there. Now, what is happening in the Sahel states now is extremely relevant. And what my sister was saying is, of course, we were not at the Berlin Conference. We didn't carve up the continent. So as the liberation and the upliftment of our minds move forward, you're seeing the works of our ancestors like Garvey and those who came before Garvey manifest in positive and visionary leadership today. That is extremely important, because not only are we aligned with what's going on in West Africa, we have a division in Burkina Faso of the government of the UNIA. And I want to stress that, because sometimes people, and she said something earlier, I'll close on that point. You got to connect globally and organize locally. And it is very important for those of us in the diaspora to understand what is going on the continent now was implemented by ancestors who came before us, and the works that we need to do. We are one African people. despite whether or not you're from South America and you're indoctrinated by the Portuguese revolutionaries, the Portuguese oppressors, whether or not you're from Europe and you're indoctrinated by the English oppressors, whether or not you're from France and you speak French, all of us as African people must come together. We did not divide up the continent. So what we find happening here now is the continent coming back together again. So I wanted to stress that, because sometimes, particularly our young brothers and sisters, need to understand when we talk Pan-Africanism, we include Kwame Nkrumah, we include Sekou Touré, we include Thomas Sankara, Nelson Mandela, Sobukwe, Steve Biko, all of those great giants that gave their lives for us is coming nurtured in the age of Aquarius. And so we want to stress that. So don't have no fear. It's time for us to love one another, learn from one another, and build. So I say that and I got to leave, but I love the fact, Brother Barrington, you invited these great people on, because as you can see, many of us are not asleep. Many of us know our cosmic assignment and we working. So 2025, we got our own plan of 2025 to move forward for a united Africa.
Thank you,
Thank you, my brother.
time. And I have to say, it's myself and Mimi who pulled this together. So thank you so much for coming. And even though you didn't, I'm glad that you were able to break up some time, because it was important, as I told you, for us to talk to you, because you have been one of the people in the trenches for much of your life. And we just wanted to be able to acknowledge you and have you give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and
Give thanks, my brother.
but
Give thanks.
I got to get ready, but I really appreciate the other guests that you have. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. I love you all. We are one, and we are working for all of our interests going forward. I have to get ready for a 3 o'clock Zoom, but I appreciate y'all, and I'll be in touch. Brother Barrington and my dear sister Queen, thank y'all. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you.
And you too.
Thank you.
And you too. And you too.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So,
Barry, may I say this?
yes, ma'am.
Marcus Garvey was a great artist. Marcus Garvey might have been the first minister of culture of Jamaica. And surely the cultural and creative industries have a very special place and a very special role to play in how we take this forward so that it doesn't die. Many people do not know that Marcus Garvey wrote poems saluting women, saluting his mother in particular. What can we learn from those writings about the women in the Garvey movement, about the way Garvey saw women at that time? Many people do not know that Marcus Garvey wrote hymns and plays, and that for many years he ran a cultural center here in Jamaica where people would go not just to watch performances, but to have discussions about world affairs in what Garvey would call pleasant Sunday evenings. That Garvey, in fact, through the Edelweiss Park, gave birth to many of the performers of his time, Ronnie Williams in particular. So what is the role of artists in writing and delivering the stories, not just one story, but the stories of Marcus Garvey? We know the power of the arts, the power of music, the power of performances. What is our particular role in using our art forms to get those messages out? Critically, I want to say this, and it might apply more to North America than it does to the Caribbean. Where is the money that all of our wealthy millionaires and multi-millionaires in arts and sports, what is their responsibility in funding the work which needs to be carried forward? Yes, we all want to look pretty and live in fancy houses and live all of this fancy lifestyle. But if we do not ensure a certain kind of worldview, then we are going to spending a lot of money building burglar bars to keep ourselves safe, and spending money on rehabilitation programs for our young people who go astray because they haven't learned self-love. and personal pride.
Yeah.
So I also want to call upon people in the cultural and creative industries to examine what their role is and or should be going forward.
Thank you, Doc. The thing for me, I'm looking at all of this. 100 years. This is 100 years since they arrested Marcus Garvey, charged him with fraud. As Ron and Baba said, Franz Fanon, 1925, Malcolm X, 1925. So many of the movers and shakers of our culture, men and women, they were either born that time, they were around that time. The thing for me is that we don't. My mom used to always say, "What is old always becomes new again," and we constantly cycle. So we're at a point now in my mind that all of the things that we always said we go and do, if we were, what would I do if I was in slavery? What would I do if I was in Nazi Germany? Now's the goddamn time for us to see what we're really going to do.
Yeah.
Because even as we look at this opportunity as a flowering opportunity for us, a way for us to reconnect, to grab the energy, to project and present our narrative, our views. We have choices to make. Do you bend the knee? Do you kiss the ass of the people in control? Do you resist? How do you resist? If you're really an artist, you can't say that you're going to be a part of the regime. You're a real artist. You can't say that you are a part of the regime. Because if you believe in truth and fairness and honesty and justice, you can't say you're going to embrace these people. So we have choices to make. And Dr. Meeks is right. We have all these people, these entertainers and these celebrities and all this stuff, and their mental mindset is trapped in the white Eurocentric way of thinking. I got mine. Don't worry about it. I don't care about nobody else. I'm going to take care of myself. Nothing else matters. Because I saw a video the other day of Little Wayne saying that as far as he's concerned, there's no racism in America. And he can move where he wants. He can do what he wants, and no one's bothering him. And that is the type of mindset that makes a Snoop Dogg, Burna Boy, and Nelly decide that they're gonna go perform for the clown.
And
Right?
that's okay. And that's okay. As they say in Barbados, it ain't named Broad Street for nothing.
Yeah.
And part of what we have to do is to learn to be blinkered with the negatives, with the people who can't be helped, who can't be saved, and come together so that those of us who are of a different mindset will form the tipping point.
Yeah.
How do we get to the tipping point where the others have to run to catch up? And so sometimes we can't allow ourselves to be distracted by what they are doing. This is the mission. And the mission is to seize all of the opportunities that teach us self-love, a racial pride, and economic independence. Those have to be the watchwords that we move ahead with in 2025.
And it's telling that all of the things that you just talked about is a central thesis of Garveyism.
I like the fact that you also mentioned moving forward, coalescing with who is on this side, because you know what we often fail to do? We often fail to honor those who came before. And because we fail to honor those who came before, we can see Marcus Garvey as an oddity. If we ascribe to him paternity of all that we seek after, then we don't have to do anything because there is the Father. But Marcus Garvey learned from other people who also have to be honored. Marcus Garvey's father and Marcus Garvey's godfather, Mr. Burroughs, in whose library Garvey sat and read all of these things also have to be honored for many reasons. One of them is that we often overlook the power of the relationship between children and their parents. How young people might always have been the people who changed the world, but they have never changed the world outside of a relationship with their elders. So what
Certainly.
do we learn about the impact of Marcus Garvey's relationships with elders who mentored him? That can become a part of how we move forward, get closer to our children, get closer to other children, so that we can bring them into a world that makes the best use of what we are presented with in this moment.
Definitely, definitely.
Certainly. The power of owning your own library. I think that is one of the many examples that the relationship between Garvey and his father showed us. His father was a mason, bricklayer, and his father, as Dr. Meek said, had a relationship with Alfred Burroughs, who opened his relationship to printing. And as Dr. Meek says, the book reading, the idea, there's a beautiful line in A Raisin in the Sun when Benita asks her former date, why read books, why go to school? And he shoots down the idea that books can actually change the world. And that's when her date shoots that idea down, she dumps him right there.
Yeah.
But that was Garvey's father's way of life. That was Garvey's way of life. The idea that you can, in fact, read ideas from books and use those ideas to change the world. And that's not something that should be taken lightly. You should, in fact, be able to converse with other people who are guests in your home of ideas you've read in a book. You should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you should do that at an early age.
The idea too, Brother Rowan, of the
Yes.
power and the value of rural folks. You know, we laugh at them and call them country people, but there is a way in which the values which we can use to change the world reside in rural folks who live so close to the dirt, who feed us, who carry the proverbs and the riddles and the rhymes, which are the condensation of the wisdom of the ancestors. And so surely Garvey's rural upbringing until he was 14 and came into Kingston is something that we can learn from. Garvey's unwillingness to be stopped by what many of us would call impediments. Garvey was a serious stutterer, which is perhaps why he speaks so quickly. Garvey stuttered, and when he was 14, he entered an all-island elocution competition. How dare you? And he came third. So when he says without confidence, you're twice defeated in the race of life, but with confidence, you have won before you have begun. He knows what he's talking about. So those things that are deemed to be personal impediments, how can we turn them into strengths to move us forward?
Yeah.
Not as stumbling blocks, but as strengths. Use them to your advantage.
Absolutely.
I always keep on saying that those of us who are older, we have to stop being afraid of our children and link with them, mentor them, hold them close, and help transfer our wisdom.
Teach them about the world, the romance.
About the world, you help guide them so that they don't make the same mistakes you made, and use their energy, because you guys can move further and quicker than people my age and them type of thing. And so we need to, as Dr. Meek said, we need to find ways to reconnect and connect and reconnect to young people.
It's the most important thing we can do. Malcolm X and his parents, Mandela and his parents, Marcus Garvey and his parents, Sam Sharp, Paul Bogle. Without older people, what are we? A bag of energy with no information and nowhere to take that energy to.
And no direction.
And no direction.
Yeah.
say the reason
I think you're muted.
I don't want to unmute myself because I don't want to.
Can you hear her?
Yes, I can hear her.
Oh.
Yes.
I don't want to cause feedback.
Mute it because it's feedback. Okay.
I hear it when it's muted too.
The best way to do it, Barrington, is if you mute yourself and I'll, because we're in this. Okay. I just wanted to say that I am a child of a Garveyite. Okay. I'm gonna. A child of a Garveyite, and it means so much to work at a community college and be a filmmaker, because this story is part of our history, and we have to normalize Marcus Garvey in our history, in our hearts. All of the people that we keep mentioning, we have to normalize these people as great figures. The same name whispered like George Washington or I don't know, Thomas Jefferson, if you will. We have Marcus Garvey. We have Thomas Sankara. We have all of these amazing people that did these amazing things, and we infiltrate into our being a sense of self-pride. Because my father told me as a secretary, absolutely want, because you are of a child. I never heard, oh, you need to do this because I want you to do this, or you need to do that because that's what the status quo says. I always knew I could do whatever I wanted. I want to make sure that other people have that same empowerment, and young people in particular. So I thank you, Dr. Meeks. I thank you, Dr. Frazier. Thank you, Barrington, for
You're
always
welcome.
promoting that in anyone, especially young people, especially our young people. Because if we don't teach them that, we're not teaching them anything. We're not going to teach them this history of people that don't look like us, because they need to have it come from us, because they need to feel a sense of pride. And I think that that's the biggest sense of empowerment that will keep it growing. Really interestingly, maybe 2 years ago, my son wrote this song called Like a Whirlwind, and we told him what it meant for him to use that word, because both Barrington and I were completely touched by the song. And he just told me, he said, I wrote it to empower myself to feel okay about a certain thing that had happened. And life is like a whirlwind. So Garvey was like a whirlwind. And wonderfully enough, we have
Professor
I
Hansford.
have to go. I have an appointment.
Okay.
In 15 minutes.
I'm
Thank you
going
so
to
much,
have to go
Barrington,
as
for
well
the
because
invite and Mimi for sharing.
my battery is dying. But I just want to close by saying I recognize, and I want us all to recognize this moment as an opportunity for healing of all sides.
Yes.
Those who were wronged and those who did the wrong, the oppressor and the oppressed. We live in the same world. And this moment really and truly represents a moment for reflection, introspection, and healing. And those are all components for me of how we use it well to take advantage of all the other opportunities that present themselves.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for the time. Please ask Jamaica to send some sunshine, cause we cold up here.
We have so much hotness. Blessings, all the best for the year. Look forward to the next discussion.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.
All right, give thanks.
Professor Hansford.
Yes, I'm sorry. It looks like I missed the panel. My apologies. I'm a little bit under the weather this morning. I think I might have been partying too hard yesterday or something like that.
We're glad you're able to make it. We understand he's not going to show himself because he's not feeling well. But we'll still continue the conversation.
Okay.
Some of the things I asked may sound repetitious, but
oh, that's okay.
You said you partied hard last night. How do you feel about the pardon? What are your thoughts?
Well, no, like I am really excited about the way that it was received. I think it was received appropriately throughout the world, and the Caribbean really spoke out about how excited they were. I know Prime Minister Mia Mottley made a statement. Prime Minister Holdness. I think that it just goes to show that his influence was amplified yesterday. Garvey's legacy was amplified, and that's really what we wanted to happen. That's exactly what we wanted to happen. We wanted his legacy to be amplified, and the hope is that there may be thousands, maybe millions of people will be exposed to his Marcus Garvey's ideas and concepts and philosophies, who might not otherwise have known about him if they got curious about what all the noise was about yesterday. I think that was one of the things that I hoped for, that this would be an opportunity to provide a spotlight on Garveyism.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. If you met somebody who had not heard of Marcus Garvey and they asked you why all of a sudden there's all this hullabaloo, what would you tell them about Garvey?
No, I would talk about what he stood for. He stood for uplift of yourself and your people, and entrepreneurship, and being a strong person that believed in yourself, loves yourself, someone who had a global perspective on unity for our people, someone who was really trying to help Black people during a time when 100 years ago we were in some dire straits. And I'd want them to think about whether today in 2025 we're living up to that example. Are we still taking those types of chances? Are we still willing to make those types of projects and fight in that way to try to get freedom for all of our people? And if not, then this could be an opportunity for us to re-energize ourselves, just like this Dr. King holiday. These are both things that are symbolic. Someone could say, like, what's all the hullabaloo around Dr. King? He's been dead, all these years. Why are you still talking about him?
Yeah.
And the reality is that this gives us a chance to reaffirm that commitment in our own selves to the principles that these people stood for.
Yeah. I just want to say that Professor Justin Hansford, you're a professor at the Harvard Law School, right?
Howard, yep, in Washington, D.C. Yep.
Howard University.
You better get there right.
And he's one of the lawyers who worked for many years, for more than 15 years, to gain pardon for the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. What next?
Well, that's up to Dr. Garvey. I will say that we plan to have a celebration on February 18th in the evening at Howard University in Washington, D.C., where Dr. Garvey will be present, and we're inviting the whole world. Hope that people come in from across the country and from the Caribbean, from everywhere, to talk about the meaningfulness of this moment in history and to celebrate. So that, to me, that's the first thing that's up on the to-do list. Then secondly, you know, I'm happy to say I'm part of an organization called the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. What we are trying to do is draft a Declaration of Rights for people of African descent, which really is following in the footsteps of what Garvey put together in 1920, which was a Declaration of Rights for Negro people of the world, and really use our platform at the UN to fulfill Dr. Marcus Garvey's legacy of trying to let the world know that Black people globally have a unique set of rights and claims to justice, including reparations for enslavement and for Jim Crow and for colonization, and that we're going to fight for our rights. And it's not the same as everybody else's human rights.
Yeah,
you know, everybody else didn't have the experiences that we had with, you know, the Middle Passage and all these things. So we have a right to stand up for that, to fight against hate speech, to fight against racism. And so that is something that we can do to continue Marcus Garvey's legacy, is to try to make that dream a reality.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder, do you think that this happening at this point illuminates what some of the challenges that we face with a new administration and the so-called rightward movement of this country, where they're doing everything they can to try to take us back to the past and make sure that we're third and fourth class citizens?
Yeah, you know, that's a great point. There is a lot to be concerned about in terms of what's happening in the country right now. I don't know where things are headed. I think it reminds me that even when things were really much worse politically, 100 years ago, we were still fighting. We were still fighting, and we were still inspiring each other. We were still standing up for what's right. So we're not going to slow down now, 100 years ago, because of a different political context, because we've been in much worse political environments. So we've shown ourselves well as people. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I have folks that I know on different social media platforms who are losing their minds, and I'm like, in spite of what we face, we can't stop doing what we're doing. We can't just throw our hands up. We got to fight. And I mean, I look at the countries in the Sahel region, the Malis, Burkina Faso, and those places who for me are lighthouses of liberation and the fight for freedom. And to me, that ties directly to Marcus Garvey and his legacy.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what he would want them to do. He was talking in his time. We were talking about anti-colonization and independence from colonial rule. But now we have people standing up against what they had called neo-colonization and economic rule from folks in Europe over Africans, and they're standing up against that. And that is something that is sweeping West Africa. And as my role requires me to do at the UN, I'm keeping very close watch over what's happening with our countries over there. And I think that there's a good chance that in the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you're going to see more of that. And there's a lot, and part of that has to do with the rising influence of China on the continent and in the Caribbean. So people have more alternatives, or countries have more alternatives now in terms of economic options. So there's a lot of things happening in this world in 2025. I think you're making a good point that all of the folks in this fight, we're not just looking backwards and just going on and on about things that happened 100 years ago. We're trying to apply those principles to very current events in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what this is all about.
Because I keep on telling people we do not have to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
That's
right.
There's examples of things that our ancestors did that worked. So we have to just figure out ways to reapply them. Maybe move some things around to make it more applicable to 2025. But there's no way that we can avoid doing the work. And I think for me, I always think about our ancestors, our African ancestors, the things that they went through, the Middle Passage, enslavement, and they survived.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of them thrived, and those that didn't, they still laid the foundation so that we could be here.
That's right.
And so so in my mind, we got to get tough. We got to get tougher, and realize that we can't lay down and just give up.
That's right. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And if that's something that, in our times, it's not always the first thing that we think about, to go to the wisdom of our elders or the wisdom of our ancestors. Yeah, a lot of folks trying to make it, using their own wits. People think with AI and social media that they're in a new context where the old rules don't apply, but that's not true. As long as you have human beings on the planet, those principles still apply.
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. Can you tell us a little about the process that you and your cohort, your allies, had to go through to move from this being a demand on paper to the point where Biden said, "Okay, I'm going to do this." And I'm not asking you for a recitation, but any way that I know, because it's a long and detailed process. But I just wanted to see if you could give us an idea of what it was like and how you all dealt with it.
Lots of ups and downs. You're right. I mean, in 15 years of work, I don't know how to describe it. I guess I would say a lot of research on the front end on what the process entailed. A lot of teamwork, people. There are so many people that contributed in ways that I didn't even know about. And press conferences, panel discussions, writing papers, submitting things to the White House. The hardest part of this process was finding out what we needed to do. I'm a professor right now, so it's easy it makes it easy for students when you say, okay, here's your assignment. If you check these boxes, you'll get an A, right? But here, nobody was sitting there saying, okay, these are the things you need to do to get this exoneration. We knew that Garvey was innocent, but just him being innocent was not enough to get the attention of the White House. And we had to really have some creativity to figure out what was necessary and to figure out if there were roadblocks. And different things came up at different times. At one point, there were some questions. There was this issue that maybe some people felt that Garvey had some issue with Jewish people. And so we found some Jewish leaders, American Jewish leaders, who spoke out on behalf of the campaign and said that, no, actually, come to find out, Garvey was a person who had some really close relationships with Jewish Jamaican lawyers like Louis Ashenheim. We talked about that. And, and so we were able to overcome that hurdle. Another hurdle would be trying to convince them that he really was innocent. And so we really had to dig through the record. And, I wrote that book, which talked about the ins and outs of the trial from a legal perspective. And so we crossed that hurdle. And that was big because the pardon attorneys would have to go through that record on their own in order to determine his innocence. And
Mhm.
they didn't want to do that because we're talking about a trial that happened 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And, they didn't want to go to the archives and do all this research. So somebody had to do that for them, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that took some time, and we had to check that box. So that the process involved a lot of work behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and work trying to figure out what the hurdles were, step one, and then trying to get over those hurdles, step two.
Yeah. 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 And you said that it was a really broad coalition of allies,
Well,
students,
yeah,
members of Congress. Who else?
students, members of Congress. I always point to the UNIA.
Mhm.
They had members that had been working on this for decades. Some of those folks passed away. Farouk Muhammad was one,
Mhm.
a lawyer for the UNIA who passed away. Um, Mariwama Kamal. So this is some of the UNIA members. Yaw Davis.
Mhm.
I am constantly learning of new people who I was not aware uh,
We're
were
involved.
involved. Like Eric Holder, the
Mhm.
former Attorney General for the U.S.
Yeah.
Like he has roots from, was it Barbados?
Barbados. Yeah.
Yep, yep. But he was someone who was an advocate. So there are people who are doing support actions behind the scenes that I was not even aware of. I was aware of a lot of the folks. There's a lawyer named Anthony Pierce who is a partner at a big law firm called Aiken Gump, and he volunteered his services and his law firm services over the years. That was one of the central moving pieces that really helped to make a difference.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, the list goes on. Kichi Taifa, activists, so many people who are Pan Africanists here in DC have lent their expertise. There's just a long list of people from Delaware,
Uh,
Alicia Clark, some of the folks, Lorraine Badley. There's a number of folks who were able to appeal to Biden because they lived in his hometown,
okay.
and we had some access to him that way. So there's just a long list of people.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
hopefully we'll all be able to get together on February 18th and party, and maybe we'll do another one in Jamaica at some point.
Ah. Well, we look forward to that. I don't want to take any more of your time. I know that you're under the weather, but I'm
All
just
right.
grateful that you took the time. Um, this will be available. We're gonna post it in YouTube, and I'm gonna post it on Facebook
Posted
as well.
now.
Oh, it's posted on YouTube. So
Okay.
we'll send you the link and everything.
It's streaming live.
This is streaming live. Yeah.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Barrington. And say
Yeah.
thank you to your wife. And you guys have a great evening.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Get
Yeah.
well.
All
Okay.
right.
Bye bye.
I want to take the time to share one thing, Barrington,
Mhm.
if we can. Let me try and check it out. Can you talk a little bit about the movie that we saw about this very same court case that we that Marcus Garvey got pardoned for? There's a film called Mosiah that just recently came out. I think it actually came out in 2023. It's a short film.
Yeah.
We saw it at Ada Bobino's fabulous film festival.
San Antonio International Film Festival, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And I'm going to try to pull up the trailer. I have it queued, but I don't know how well it's going
This
to
is
look.
done by a filmmaker named Gerard, and he captures a lot of the injustices and the duplicity of the U.S. government during Garvey's trial. As Dr. Fraser and Baba Senghor and Dr. Meeks talked about, there were people who did everything they could to derailed Garvey. First and foremost, J. Edgar Hoover of the then very young Federal Bureau of Investigation. So Mimi's lining up the trailer.
I don't know how well it's gonna work, but let's see.
Try it and see. So we have this broadcast to recognize and acknowledge the decision by the Biden administration to grant
Thank you.
Marcus Garvey
Come off stage.
pardon. Most of the supporters wanted exoneration, but the pardon is the best they could do, since Professor Hansford was saying that they didn't have exoneration laws, and you couldn't really do it by executive order. I assume that if Biden's only option was an executive order, the dude who just replaced him would very quickly have rescinded that order. You know, the fine human being that he is. So, yeah.
I don't think I can make it happen
Okay.
right now.
But we're gonna be talking to other people. We're gonna be bringing other folks to discuss their thoughts, reactions to the Garvey pardon. So maybe by then, the tech guru will have figured out how to do it.
So tell us about the whirlwind phrase and why that's important when we're talking about Marcus Garvey.
Well, you keep talking. Let me look for the phrase.
Okay, the proper phrase. I am not on camera. You are.
So you can go on camera. Don't be trying to hide now.
I'm not trying to hide. I need to be on that computer, and if you and I could switch places, I could do that. Stay there while you're on the air. Look at the camera.
Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm. Look for me all around you. For with God's grace I shall come and bring with me countless millions of black slaves who have died in America and the West Indies, and the millions in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. That is a whirlwind phrase.
Can you read it on camera? Because you were looking down.
Yeah, because I don't know it offhand.
Okay, I'll find it. I'll find it for you.
Well, why don't you read it?
Okay, can you get up? Go this way. It'll be easier. Oh, okay. So, the Garvey phrase, look for me in the whirlwind or the storm, goes a little like this. Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm. Look for me all around you, for with God's grace I shall come and bring with me countless millions of black slaves who have died in America and the West Indies and Latin America, and the millions in Africa, to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life. I love Marcus Garvey for all of the things that I have gained and been empowered by throughout my life, and having married into a Jamaican family has been a great honor, and spiritually a great uplift for my family. And it is a really important thing to have this pardon, and to be able to broadcast this out and give all of these notable people that have been on this program a chance to speak about what Marcus Garvey meant
to them what Marcus Garvey means today in our society, as well as how we can move forward in the future and continue the gains of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I'm trying to get this trailer for you all. So give me 1 second while Barrington joins from the other computer, because this is the only computer that I can get. I can get this film downloaded on. Give us 2 seconds of grace here. This one first. And it is coming. Did you put yourself on screen, Barrington? Can you do that?
I don't know anything about your computer.
Okay.
You're YouTube over here. StreamYard Studio. Okay.
Thank you. Hello. If you put on the headsets, you can hear. And I'm hoping that if Sam doesn't join soon, we can end this. But I'd like to show the video. Give me a few more seconds.
Marcus Garvey was brilliant. Entrepreneur, started several businesses, advocated self-sufficiency, economic independence, spoke frequently about the need for Africans United Negro Improvement Association had 6 million adherents around the world in 40 countries.
Wow.
And he credited Booker T. Washington with giving him the inspiration, I guess. And that's a part of the reason why he came to the U.S. He, in turn, as many of our participants talked about, influenced a whole generation and generations of African leaders and educators and arts people and creators and the whole 9 yards, musicians. He is credited with creating the Pan-African flag.
Mm.
And several African countries adopted the colors when they were moving towards independence. So even as we live in this time, we have to acknowledge the breadth and the depth of Garvey's influence. Sorry.
I think I have it ready.
Okay.
Let's see if we can show this.
I unequivocally reject the racist assumption of white America's ideology that God created the black man inferior. Because if Negroes are created in God's image and Negroes are black, then God too must in some sense be black. It's time to unite our brothers and sisters across the country and sail to Africa. Liberia is calling us now.
And what happens when the government tries to stop us?
By the time they try it, it will already be too late.
They claim to uplift the Negro race, to persuade Negroes to buy shares of stock in the Black Star Line.
This trial is politically driven. They want to end the movement by assassinating my character. By not taking the plea, you face a mandatory 5 years in prison. Do you see any fear in my eyes?
Who does he think he is? Black Moses?
You'd better stop him quick. He's gonna tear this whole country apart.
How much longer will you endure the pain and suffering that this country places upon you? Dive down, black men, dive down and dig.
Hold your head high, Marcus. You are not the first the system has tried to break, and you will not be the last. The future of our people relies on you.
Africa for the Africans!
Quite a powerful film that we got a chance to see at the San Antonio Black International Film Festival in San Antonio, Texas, run by a fellow Bison and one of my very best friends, Ada Bobineau, who was also a producer on a seminal film set in colonial Jamaica, Sankofa. That film moved me because I did not know the details of the trial and the trumped up charges brought against Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I learned as I got older of all of these smaller things about Garvey that I did not, I did not have any idea of the Black Star Line until I was about a teenager. And right after my father had passed away, I was looking at his book collection, and he had the autobiography of Malcolm X, and in it he had highlighted a section where it was known or revealed that Malcolm's parents were Garveyites and members of the UNIA. And I even believe that for certain people, we have friends who hosted, whose parents hosted Garvey in their homes. We have a story of that. I think it was one of Faith's friends hosted Marcus Garvey in their home. An artist that we know, another artist that we know. It's interesting how the ancestors have come together in this way on January 19th, the day before Biden's last day in office, the day before Martin Luther King's holiday. These little wins that we keep getting as a people for our ancestors are significant, and we have to keep talking about it and keep the legacy alive, because I think as Roan or Dr. Meeks and even Baba Senghor had alluded to in the conversation earlier, that we are here for a purpose, and we all have our own individual purpose. Your individual purpose at the moment is to be this voice for the ancestors, for the deities. Tell me what the day means to you, because I noticed that in our conversation, you didn't talk about you, because you sit in your you and you sit in your journalistic way. So now I'm interviewing you, Mr. Salmon.
So what was the question?
I want to know what this means to you, what this not exoneration, pardon, means to you. I'm privy enough to be your wife and to hear what you said yesterday. You were like, well, if he pardoned him, does it mean that to everyone else that he's not guilty? That is it a pardon? Is it an exoneration? Is it a commuting of a sentence? I don't think so.
The sentence was commuted in 1925.
Okay.
Because he had been sentenced to 5 years, and after 2 years, they deported him back to Jamaica. I was ecstatic when I heard, because I just wasn't sure if Biden was going to do it. But when I said, I heard Justin on Peridiana on Saturday, and he said he was confident that he would get pardoned, and I was like, So Marcus Garvey has been a seminal part of my upbringing. Grew up in Jamaica. Burning Spear, reggae musician, reggae singer, reggae superstar, has always, just about every song that he's created, talked about Marcus Garvey, and other reggae artists, musicians talked about it. So for me, it wasn't hard. I'm always curious. I would go looking, philosophies and opinions of Honorable Marcus Garvey, and other books. Like Ron talked about, Tony Martin had written several books talking about it. So, and then of course, he's a Maroon, and I have Maroon ancestry as well.
So do I.
And as do you. So there's that connection. But I was just intrigued of the idea that somebody in the 1900s, early 1900s, would be so driven to try to build. Well, they said he had a number of companies.
Yeah.
Dry cleaners, printery, newspaper offices, and other businesses.
Yes.
That he used, to hire people to try to make money and all of that. It's interesting because
that Black Star Line, alone, the sheer brilliance of saying, let's export goods and services to the rest of the world and bring ourselves back.
Yeah, but we have too many Negroes who were pissed off and upset that he was getting the attention that they thought that they should have.
I honestly, yes, I honestly believe that, yes, we have those that work against us, but I also believe that just, and just to play devil's advocate, that battle cry would be something that would be ignored, because all of the people, someone like Harriet Tubman, someone like Frederick Douglass, someone like Sojourner Truth could not, and someone like Marcus Mosiah Garvey could not get everyone to sign on. And there's Sam on cue, and could not get everyone to sign on, and that really helps and works against the efforts of other people. Barrington, do you want to switch places, because I really want you to be heard? And Sam, welcome. Please introduce yourself to our audience. I'm going to switch us up here so that you are big, and Barrington and I can remove ourselves.
No doubt. Peace and blessings. How y'all doing?
We are fine. How are you?
I'm blessed. I'm doing very well. I can't complain. For those of y'all who are listening who don't know who I am,
Just introduce yourself.
Sam P.K. Collins. I'm a journalist, educator, a native Washingtonian of Liberian descent. I'm also a Garveyite. So I am in the lineage, starting at Garvey, going all the way down to me, as far as those who took Garvey's course on African philosophy. So after Garvey's conviction and deportation, he never actually set foot in the United States. As a matter of fact, when he would go on train rides up to Canada, from what I read, he couldn't even get off the train when it passed through the States. So between 1927 and 1940, when he passed away in the UK, Garvey actually traveled between Jamaica, the UK, and Canada. And Canada was where he had the course on African philosophy. The Garvey biographer, Tony Martin, actually reprinted those books. And these were courses, about just different aspects of Garveyism, diplomacy, self-determination. He even touched on religion. Him being a Roman Catholic, he adopted this sort of Christ consciousness where, even when you are reading about Christ and, our relationship with Christianity, even with that, he was able to transcend that to talk about, self-determination and taking care of your body, taking care of your spirit, being a good Garveyite. And he taught that course to Charles L. James. Charles L. James taught it to Baba Senghor, and Baba Senghor taught it to those of us.
Okay.
Charles L. James was President General of the UNIA in the 1980s or so. So long after Garvey's death or transition, the UNIA still been around, doing the work. And the pardon was a combination of all of that, in part. So
did you expect it, the pardon?
No, not at all. I didn't expect it, or younger missed like that. I don't really, and people in my age range were thinking, well, that's not really a tangible victory or something tangible to be going toward. Why not go for figures who are currently here, who are currently locked up physically, or why not? That's what we thought was a better use of our time. Not all of us, of course, because you have Justin Hansford, Esquire, who worked with Dr. Garvey, Garvey's son, on it. So of course he was very passionate about it, and I think that since it happened, I came around, to just being sort of encouraged by it, because it does show the power of grassroots organizing. And regardless of how you feel about either administration, you still got to approach it diplomatically, because Garvey, he approached organizing as if you were creating a government. The UNIA was a government, as a matter of fact. So it's always about engaging the powers that be, not as a beggar or a pauper, so to speak, but more so somebody who is an equal, like a not a peer, but more like you're coming at them organized. And I think that's what that represented, because you even had Congress people, Yvette Clarke, jumping in, and I just thought that, you know, it was pretty encouraging. It brought Garvey to the forefront. I think that it allows to address the misconceptions about his legacy. We got a lot of ADOS, FBA people really denigrating Garvey, really taking on the talking points of the U.S. government as it relates to the mail fraud trial. You know, just between Mr. Hansford's work and the reasonings that we're going to be doing, you can actually dissect the case. You know, as far as like the bias of the judge that presided over the case, him being an NAACP member, and you know, with W.E.B. Du Bois and Garvey pretty much being enemies at the time. You know?
The judge was with the NAACP?
Exactly. Yes, sir. The judge was with the NAACP. As a matter of fact, according to Justin Hansford, the judge's name was U.S. Judge Julian Mack, an NAACP member. And there was also the question of the intentionality of mail fraud. Did Garvey intend to commit mail fraud as they defined it? So and I mean, once you look, it's definitely, because people don't really give Garvey respect. You know, at least people outside of the insular community. The furthest back they'll go is like the Black Panther. But you know, Garvey doesn't really get much. And you know, and even with Garvey, you know, we can talk about Martin Delaney, Queen Mother Moore, the convention movements, you know, the 19th century, just around nation building. So I think that this represents one thing I do, you know, I really don't like the characterization of Garvey as a civil rights figure. And I think that civil rights is a catch-all that really waters down the key differences in the spectrum of Black political thought. You know, so when they get around to calling Garvey and Malcolm X civil rights figures, it sort of waters down.
They're radical revolutionaries.
Exactly.
That term scares the shit out of people. So they're always trying to water it down and stuff. You know, because I refuse to see Garvey or Malcolm X as civil rights leaders, because it minimizes their perspective, their outlook, and their work. So it's interesting too, because Mimi just said, tell what this means spiritually in Akan. I'm a practicing Akan adherent, trace my spiritual lineage to West Africa, Ghana, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast. I have always maintained that anybody who was talking about moving towards liberation couldn't do it unless they had a spiritual base. It's especially in this particular context, this materialistic, almost nihilistic environment. And so, oh, Frank, we lost Sam. Oh, he's back. Oh, at the stage. Yeah. So, I don't think that we could ever really make the type of progress that we made without a spiritual base. And I don't know how you feel about that. What do you think about that, Sam?
Let me know if y'all hear me.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, perfect. It's definitely not possible. We're fighting a spiritual war. I think that our inability to really, give me 1 second, please. I think that our inability as a people to recognize that is what's getting us caught up in this current situation, because a lot of us have really traded the spiritual for the material. Even in some segments of the Black leftist movement, there's always this talk about materialism or material dialectics. You know, they want to see it, they want to be tangible, but the spiritual really gets cast aside as a tool of conservatives, of nationalists, when in fact spiritual systems are the root of governance. You know, it's the foundation of governance, because you know it's the only reason why, you know, I don't see the current style of government working on the African continent, because that's not our natural system. You know, so we got to recognize spirituality is also connected to culture, and culture, as Dr. Marimba Ani tells us, is our immune system. So where we are spiritually as a people, right, really dictates how we're going to withstand this war that's been inflicted on us for hundreds of years. Like, because they have to get it spiritually first, man. It's
Yeah. That's so true. It's interesting because I keep on thinking about the way that people are moving in this country in the West, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. The whole it's as if most folks aren't really thinking about. I don't even know if there's a majority of people who are thinking that we cannot continue to live in this system. The system is corrupt. The system is any type of negative thing you can think of. It's inhumane. It's all these things, and they keep on trying to tell us that we need to reform it. And for me, the system can't be reformed. It's too corrupt. It's too dirty. It's too I mean, I always keep on saying, I have seen so many cases of these people who are willing to sell their children. They eat their young. So if they eat their young that they produced, what do you think they're going to do to us?
Exactly. So, it's the middle class race, you know, that get to think. A lot of us feel some relative comfort here, despite the hardship, or despite the signs that are clearly there. We feel some sort of comfort here, and in America, from the womb to the tomb, there's a lot of propaganda and a lot of consciousness shaping that inculcates us. So from the very moment that you're born, you are already inundated with things that shape a paradigm that's going to make you feel very comfortable here, even though this place is not the best for us. You know, oftentimes my concern is that, you know, even with people wanting to repatriate, it's a question of, well, what attitude do you repatriate with? You know, are we as people willing to look at our brothers and sisters on the continent or wherever through a brotherly prism, not through an Americanized prism where we are impatient about, you know, meals coming out, or we're not cognizant of different customs and things like that. You know, there's an American attitude or a Western attitude in the best of us that we gotta mitigate. Exactly. You know, so and even, you know, they, you know, a lot of critics of Garvey, they said he was, you know, sort of paternalistic in a way, I guess, in the way that he would, because like during the 1920 convention, he was voted as provisional president of Africa, and you know, some of the Marxist detractors, they would say he took on more of a paternalistic tone. But I mean, I guess to each his own. But repatriation is a must. But I think that, you know, right now we are politically immature to understand like exactly what that means. And you know, of course, with Trump in office, there's potential to get out of that. But I think that even now, more people are just very content, very complacent with this Trump presidency. And Trump is more dangerous now than he was the first time around.
Yeah.
And I think it really set in for me, from my understanding, you know, not to say that he, whatever that pseudo ceasefire is, not saying he facilitated it, but to understand that he already had an envoy in place shows you that you're dealing with somebody who's, you know, who's a jack fool, but a jack fool with experience now. Like, so, you know, what are we going to do as a people? You know, and like these black Democrats. Sorry, go ahead. My fault, brother.
No, they're stupid. The Democratic Party continues to fight an asymmetrical war, and they don't have the tools. They use the tools that they have to fight them. They're still fighting Republicans in the 1950s. That shit's done. That's done.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm reading things now where Democrats are saying, how do we work with Republicans when Republicans have said, we're not working with you, we're not doing anything with you, everything that you do we're trying to kill. Why would you want to be trying to work with them when they've made it clear that they don't give a damn about you?
That's happening in DC too. Quiet as kept. Just the moderation, and the Republicans, they're very good at, but that's the thing though, because we as a people, we threw away our opportunity in '73. I think that was the Gary Convention when we joined the Democratic Party, because it's like, there's no consciousness, and you have a sea. They call it a sea of interest. So we don't have the buying power in order to like dominate the corporate structure of the Democratic Party. So you're going in there, the infrastructure is already set up where you have to accommodate in order to advance. So a lot of these cats we see coming out of the party, they've been in it for years, and they've just taken on positions. Even like Hakeem Jeffries, forgive me. I'm talking about the uncle. The uncle, man, far different. Night and day, man. Night and day. You know, I just
so it's going to be interesting to see. But I think the thing that bothers me the most is how much everybody's trying to normalize this. Mainstream media is like the bend the knee. I looked this morning because I refused to watch the inauguration, but I went onto the TV, and everything was like the inauguration of Donald Trump, like it was normal, and everybody had coverage starting at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they had a whole rack of people who were talking about it. And I suspect only MSNBC would say anything negative about him or talk or say exactly what he represents. Everybody else is trying to act like, oh, this is just a regular dude who's come back in for a second term. But I will say it. I have said it. All of those who voted for him, I hope they get horrors for the next 4 years. I do. And I one of my ex-friends who we split because of her support of him even before he came out MAGA, she was saying, may God bless him in his new term. And I thought to myself, God ain't got shit to do with this. God don't have nothing to do with this. But this Christian nationalist Christian theology foolishness, they're making it, they're acting like he's Jesus' second coming. So it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, they got his heart. I mean, well, Trump has people's hearts. It's interesting. He's tapped into the conservatism of the black community. And the ethnocentrism of not only of African Americans whose families have been here for generations, but I would even say more of the more recent immigrants who have set up families here, gotten residency. They're differentiating themselves from
the undocumented.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it more this time. It's like the conservatism
Mm-hmm.
and the Americanism, it's interesting, because I think even with that, I've always envisioned, and if anybody wants to take on this idea, by all means, we need some sort of service. And I'll leave y'all with this because I got to get back to the work at hand. But we need a way where, like, migrants to the United States within the Pan-African world, just like you would come through customs and get an education, we need a Pan-African education for people who come in, might not be aware, not aware, but like, of course, because everybody's aware, but just sort of driving the point home that, hey, listen, this is what happened here. This is the history of this country. You're from Cameroon or you're from Liberia. You're from, Trinidad, but we're all, the people who've come here, they've done this, or we've go over here and done that, and just creating opportunities to
teach them.
Teach them, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We always appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. This is Sam.
Man.
He is somebody who, anytime I walk around the Washington metropolitan area and say Sam P.K. Collins, people perk up. Oh, that young dude, the journalist who kicking DC government's ass, who's holding them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you.
May it continue. Pan-Africanist, youth member of the UNIA, visionary, scholar.
Yes, sir.
All those things. We thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.
We're going to call you back because this is going to be an ongoing conversation about Garvey and branching out into Pan-Africanism and having folks who are listening, begin to make those connections between where they are, where they live, what they're doing, and the broader global implications of the things that we as Black people in this place need to be doing.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, good. I am too. All right, brother. Have a Mimi. Say goodbye. Come on. Don't be acting like you shy.
So I'm just trying to get all the bugs.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Sam, for always answering the call. We appreciate the work that you're doing with young people at the newspaper and spreading the word, so to speak, of this new way of thinking. Because in this world in 2025, we need to have a brain trust, if you will, and you are part of our sacred brain trust. Thank you.
I received that. Thank y'all so much, and I'm looking forward to next time. So keep me in the loop. We got
sir.
Got more to talk about.
And say hi to the lovely lady.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I will. I got y'all. I love y'all.
Now, hope we can get together soon.
We love you too.
Love you too.
Love you too. We will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Peace.
Peace.
Okay, so I think that we did the daggone thing. The Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey was pardoned yesterday by U.S. President Joseph Biden.
As he walked out the door.
We don't even need to talk about that.
No, that's good. That's
Today,
good. That's not a criticism.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying. Today is Martin Luther King's birthday.
The official.
The birthday holiday. Sorry.
Yeah.
Barrington,
yes.
You told me yesterday there was a quote that MLK said about Garvey. We know that Malcolm X had a direct connection as his parents were in the UNIA.
Yeah.
But tell us what Martin Luther King shared about Marcus Garvey, and then we'll.
I don't remember the quote offhand.
Oh, let me look.
Yeah, please. But he talked about, he credited his leadership and the work and the influence that he did in this country while he was here.
So in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey was the first man of color in the history of the United States to lead and develop a mass movement. Mm-hmm. He was the first man on a mass scale and level to make the Negro feel like he was somebody. Mm-hmm. And that was actually from Professor Hansford, mm-hmm. Howard University professor and fellow Bison. So really beautiful words. Today, as we celebrate the holiday that was made for to commemorate Martin Luther King's birthday. Mm-hmm. But we celebrate in a little bit of a different way today. So I'm very happy to be able to do that. And we can go. So let me close this stream.
Goodbye, folks.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Imagine living like a black man. Yeah. Imagine living like a black man. Yo, a black man in America. Sorta kinda like being treated just like a terrorist. Living how I'm living, it's really no comparisons. They systematically trying to kill us, now that's the scariest. I swear the numbers getting various. I'm feeling like I'm Harriet, an underground soldier for my people that I'm carrying. They killed George Floyd, now I'm trying to fill the void. This the life my brother's living, it's really hard to avoid. I keep my hoodie on for Trayvon, I do it for my day ones. Sandra Bland spoke about the path that we should stay on. I can't breathe through this nonsense. The killings coming constant. The crooked politicians is never willing to stop this. Yeah, Breonna Taylor, say her name, say it again. Breonna Taylor, say her name until we win. I pray to God daily, deliver me from my sins. Trying to start a revolution, and here is where we begin. Yeah, if you want some change, you gotta model it. What else? Yeah, speak about your feelings, never bottle it. Let's talk about it. Try to do it peaceful, shout the Kaepernick. I really hate the fact that black lives not mattering. It's time to shift the narrative, I'm switching up the pattern. Yeah, it's a pandemic and racial wars that I'm battling. Saddened by the hate and discrimination, it's real. They gave us freedom under control, knowledge, man, what's the deal? Man, who's created equal? I'm trying to find the equation. Founded on oppression, we live in this situation. New days coming, I know that my people waiting. Swear we praying for a change and my brothers is losing patience. Yeah, so I gotta live for Oscar Grant. And I gotta live for Eric Garner. Yeah. And I gotta live for Terrence Cruikshank. Yeah. Swear I gotta live for Michael Brown. Yeah, man, I gotta live for Freddie Gray. Yeah. And I gotta live for Betty Jones. Yeah. Yeah. Swear I gotta live for Nipsey Hussle. Yeah. Swear to God that I'ma grind and put my people on.